Every woman should own a basic top. It is so versatile. You can pair it with joggers, a pair of jeans, or even tailored pants. So if this is something you're interested in learning, then keep watching. I'm going to be drafting on my pattern first, but you can actually draft this directly on your main fabric. So I'm starting with my shoulder line, which is also my starting point. Then from the shoulder line, I'm going to be marking my chest line or my armhole measurement, which is 8.5, and I'm going to be marking that into a straight line, and I'll also be labeling it so that we don't get confused. Next, I'm going to be marking from my shoulder to my waistline, which is 16.5 inches. I'm making the point and I'm connecting with a straight line as well. The length of this top is totally dependent on your preference. Here on this pattern, I marked 20.5 inches, but I later went ahead to extend it to 22 inches when I cut on my fabric. Then half of my shoulder width is 7.25 inches, and I'm going to be marking that on my shoulder line, and I'll be adding half inch for seam allowance. Then I'll be marking the same thing on my armhole line, and I'll be connecting both points together. Now for my neck width, I'm marking 3 inches. For the neck depth for the back is 1 inch. For the front, I made use of 5 inches, but you can use as much as 6, 7, or however you want it. So I'm just using my curve to mark out my neckline. Then the next thing to do is mark my shoulder slope, which is 0.75 inches, and I'm going to be connecting it back to my neck width. Then I'll be adding my shoulder seam allowance, which is 0.5 inches, and I'll be marking that as well. Now I'll measure what I have left on my armhole, which is about 8 inches, and I'll be dividing it by 2. Then on that point, I'll be coming out by 0.5 inches. Moving on to my bust measurements, divided by 4, which is 9.5 inches. For this tutorial, we're not adding any allowance because the fabric is stretchy, so you don't need to add allowance. Now in order to draw your front armhole, you're going to be connecting these 3 points together, and for the back armhole, you're not going to be coming out by 0.5 inches. You're just going to connect straight to quarter of your bust measurement. Now I'm going to be marking quarter of my waist measurement as well, which is 8.5 inches. Remember, no need to add allowance because this is stretchy. I marked the same thing on the full length, and then I connected all the points together with my straight ruler. Now my pattern is ready. Note that this pattern is for both the front and the back, because the front and the back is basically the same thing. The only difference is the neckline and the armhole. So I'm going to be marking that point because that part has to be cut on fold, and I make sure to indicate it on my pattern. It has to be cut on fold for both the front and the back. Then I'm going to be cutting out my pattern for the back first of all. So making sure I cut out the back armhole first and the back neckline first. Then afterwards, after cutting my back piece, I'm going to use the pattern to cut out my front piece as well. After cutting my back piece, I'm going to be trimming off my armhole, and I'm going to be cutting out my front neckline as well in order to use this pattern now to cut out my front piece. And make sure you cut it on fold. So this is what my front piece looks like on my fabric, and this is what the back looks like as well. So the first thing I'll be doing is joining my shoulder seams with half of an inch, and after joining, I went ahead to overlock it, and this is what it looks like. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is measuring what I have around my armhole. So I just used my tape to measure that, and I had a total of 19 inches. So I'll be using this to cut my sleeve, and I made sure I placed the fabric on fold, making sure I'm going to be using the stretchy part across, if you get what I'm saying. So I folded my fabric into 2, then into 4, because I'm going to be cutting both sleeves together. I want my sleeve length to be 5 inches. Then I added 1 inch for seam allowance for both the top and the bottom, which makes it 6 inches. Then the next thing to do is to mark out my cap's height. I made use of 3.5 inches for my cap's height for this sleeve, and I'm marking that on my fabric. Then I'm going to be drawing out my sleeve curve, just like drawing an inverted S. I hope you can see it. The chalk is really faint. Then on my bicep, I marked about 7 inches, and I'm going to be connecting it to the calf's height. Now I'm making sure I have half of that 19 inches that I measured earlier on my armhole, because you don't really need seam allowance for this. Like I said earlier, the fabric is stretchy. So now I'm cutting out, and I'm going to be notching the center of my sleeve. Now the next thing I'll do is go ahead and overlock the hem of my sleeves, just so it is neat when I'm joining it. So after overlocking it, this is what it looks like. Now I'll be joining my sleeves, making sure the notch part matches up with the shoulder seam. So after joining, I went ahead to overlock it, and this is what it looks like. Remember, we already overlocked the bicep part, so I'm just going to be folding it just once with 0.5 inches in order to hem it. So I'm just trimming off the excesses that I have here. After hemming the sleeves, I'll also go ahead and join my top from the sleeves all the way down, and I made sure to overlock it as well. This is what I have. So I also overlocked the down part before folding it in once, and I hemmed it. So now for the neckline, I'm going to be measuring what I have round my neckline, and when I measured it, I got a total of 25.5 inches. Now because this fabric is stretchy, I'm not going to be cutting 25.5 inches. I'm going to reduce it. So I cut out about 23 inches, but I later had to reduce it later on in the video to about 20 inches. This really depends on the stretch of your fabric. So if your fabric is very stretchy, you can reduce it with about 6-7 inches. So I cut 2 of this because I don't have enough fabric, so I'm going to be joining it right sides facing each other. The height of this strip is 1.5 inches. Then I went ahead to measure 23 inches at first, but like I said, I later reduced it because I had excess when I was turning my neckline. So these bias, I'm going to be stitching it on the wrong side of the fabric first, then I'll be turning it over to the right side of my top. So I joined first to the wrong side by 0.5 inches, and that was when I noticed that I had excess, which I had to trim out. So like I said, I should have just cut out about 20 inches for my 25.5 inches neckline. So what I did was loosen the part that I joined earlier when I was joining the strips, and then I cut out about 2.5 inches from it. Then I joined it back, and I was done with turning the first stage of the turning. So I had to flip my top to the right side now, and then I double folded it in order to do my second turning, so it makes it look very neat. So this is the first turning done. Now I'm going to be folding over this strip twice, but before that I made sure I trimmed my seam allowance so that it is not bulky and it doesn't get in the way. So I trimmed down my 0.5 seam allowance to about 1/4 inch. I did it all around my neckline. After I was done trimming, this is what I have. Now I'm going to be flipping my top over to the right side. Then I'm going to be folding my strip just like this, making sure that I cover up the first stitch that I made. Then I'm going to be stitching it down with my sewing machine. So this is just me showing you how I did it on my sewing machine. After I was done, this is what it looks like. So I went ahead to steam press with my steam iron. If you have a heat press machine, it's even better. So if you enjoyed this video, please kindly like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.